The organ music swelled through St. Augustine's Cathedral as Avery Mitchell took another careful step down the white runner. Her fingers trembled against her father's arm, and she told herself it was just normal wedding jitters. Everyone got nervous. This was fine. Richard was fine. Their life together would be fine. Fine was good. Fine was safe. The word echoed in her head with each step, matching the rhythm of the processional. Through her veil, she could see Richard waiting at the altar, his perfect smile fixed in place, his tuxedo immaculate. Behind him stood his groomsmen, all Yale graduates, all working in finance, all wearing the same expression of polite approval. Her mother was crying in the front row. Richard's mother, Catherine Blackwood, sat rigid and regal, watching everything with her sharp eyes. The Blackwood family had built a real estate empire, and Avery knew how lucky she was to be marrying into it. That's what everyone kept telling her anyway. 3 more steps to the altar. 2 more steps. Then came the thunder. At first, Avery thought it was actually thunder, a summer storm rolling in to match her mood. But the sound grew louder, closer, until it wasn't thunder at all but the unmistakable roar of a motorcycle engine. The church doors exploded inward. Wood splintered. Someone screamed. The organ cut off mid-note as a black Harley-Davidson burst through the entrance, its rider crouched low over the handlebars. The bike skidded sideways down the center aisle, tearing up the white runner, scattering flowers and wedding programs in its wake. Avery's breath caught in her throat. She knew that bike. She'd ridden on the back of it 1,000 times, her arms wrapped around the rider's waist, the wind whipping through her hair as they raced down coastal highways with no destination in mind. The motorcycle came to a stop 15 feet from the altar. The rider killed the engine, and in the sudden silence, Avery could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. He removed his helmet slowly, deliberately. Jax Cordero. 10 years. It had been 10 years since she'd seen that face, since she'd traced the scar above his left eyebrow, since she'd felt his hands on her skin. He looked harder now, all sharp angles and coiled muscle, his dark hair longer than he used to keep it. But those eyes, those storm-gray eyes that had always seen straight through her, were exactly the same. Avery. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming into the wind for a decade. Don't do this. The church erupted. Richard rushed forward, his face red. What the hell is this? Security. Someone call the police. Avery's father tried to pull her back, but she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything but stare at the ghost who just crashed through her carefully constructed life. You left, she whispered, though she wasn't sure anyone could hear her over the chaos. You disappeared. Jax swung his leg off the bike and stood, his leather jacket creaking. I had no choice. No choice. Richard's voice cracked as he positioned himself between them. You can't just, this is insane. Avery, who is this? But Avery was already pushing past him, past her father's restraining hand, past every voice of reason screaming in her head. She walked toward Jax, her wedding dress dragging through the debris, and when she was close enough to see the regret etched into every line of his face, she did the only thing that made sense. She slapped him. The sound echoed through the cathedral. Jax's head snapped to the side, but he didn't step back. When he looked at her again, there was something almost like relief in his eyes. I deserved that. You deserve a lot more than that. Avery's voice shook. You owe me an explanation. You owe me. I know. He caught her wrist gently as she raised her hand again. His touch sent electricity racing up her arm, a feeling she'd tried for 10 years to forget. I know what I owe you. That's why I'm here. I'm in witness protection, Avery. Or I was. The man you're about to marry, his family, they're the reason I had to disappear. The world tilted. Richard laughed, sharp and incredulous. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Avery, this man is clearly unstable. Security. 2 ushers were already moving toward Jax, but he didn't take his eyes off Avery. The Blackwoods aren't who you think they are, he said urgently. Your fiancé's father is connected to the organization I testified against. They've been laundering money through their properties for years. I have proof. I have. Enough. Catherine Blackwood's voice cut through the church like a blade. She stood, and something in her posture made Avery's blood run cold. Remove this man. Now. Jax's hand tightened on Avery's wrist. Come with me. Right now. Please. You're in danger here. She's not going anywhere with you. Richard grabbed Avery's other arm and suddenly she was being pulled in two directions, torn between her past and her future, between the man she'd loved and lost and the man she'd convinced herself she could love. The ushers reached Jax. He released Avery's wrist but his eyes held hers. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "Not for one day. If you want answers, if you want the truth about everything, meet me. You know where." Then he was moving faster than the ushers expected. He grabbed his helmet, swung back onto his bike and kicked it to life. The engine roared as he spun the motorcycle around, tearing up more of the carpet and rocketed back toward the ruined doors. In seconds he was gone, leaving only the smell of exhaust and burning rubber. And Avery, standing in her wedding dress amid the wreckage of her perfect day, finally understood one thing with perfect clarity. She'd been lying to herself for 10 years. Fine had never been enough. The bridal suite at the Grandview Hotel felt like a prison. Avery sat on the velvet sofa still wearing her wedding dress, her veil discarded on the floor like a fallen cloud. Her mother paced in front of the window, alternating between fury and tears. Her father stood by the door with his arms crossed, looking like he wanted to chase after Jax himself. And Richard sat beside her, his hand on her knee, his voice a steady drone of reassurance that made her want to scream. "It's going to be fine," he said for the 100th time. "We'll reschedule. Next month maybe. Somewhere more secure. We can laugh about this someday, darling." The wedding where a crazy biker crashed through. He wasn't crazy. The words came out sharper than Avery intended. Richard's hand stilled. "Excuse me. I said he wasn't crazy." Avery pulled away from him, standing up so fast her dress tangled around her legs. "His name is Jax Cordero. We were together before I met you." The room went silent. Her mother stopped pacing. Her father's eyes widened. Richard's perfect composure finally cracked. "Together." His voice was dangerously quiet. "How together?" "We were in love." Avery was surprised how easy it was to say the words, how true they still felt after all this time. 10 years ago, the summer after I graduated from college. He was working at his uncle's motorcycle shop and I was someone different then. "Someone different," Richard repeated slowly. "You mean someone who consorted with criminals?" "He wasn't a criminal. He witnessed a crime, Richard. That's different." "Is it?" Richard stood, buttoning his jacket with sharp, precise movements. "Did you know about any of this? About his supposed witness protection? About whatever delusions he's harboring about my family?" "No. I didn't know anything." Avery wrapped her arms around herself. "He left without a word. One day he was there and the next he was gone. No note, no call, no explanation. I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought he just didn't want me anymore." Her mother made a soft sound of distress. "Sweetheart, why didn't you ever tell us?" "Because I was trying to forget." Avery looked at Richard. "I was trying to move on. To build something stable, something that made sense. And then you came along and you were everything that was safe and logical and I convinced myself that was enough." "Was enough?" Richard's face had gone pale. "What are you saying?" Before Avery could answer, the door burst open. Catherine Blackwoods swept in, followed by Richard's father, Harrison. Where Catherine was all cold elegance, Harrison was warm and jovial. The kind of man who made donations to children's hospitals and played golf with senators. But Avery was looking at them differently now, seeing them through the lens of what Jax had said. "There's my almost daughter-in-law," Harrison boomed, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Quite the excitement, wasn't it? Don't you worry, I've got the best security team in the city tracking down that deranged individual. He'll be dealt with appropriately." Something in his tone made Avery's skin prickle. "What does dealt with appropriately mean?" she asked. Harrison's smile widened. "Just that he'll face legal consequences for his actions, of course. Destruction of property, disturbing the peace, terroristic threats." "He didn't make any threats." "No." Catherine's voice was ice. "He made wild accusations about our family, crashed through a church and attempted to kidnap a bride." "I'd say that's quite threatening, wouldn't you?" Avery met the older woman's gaze and saw something that made her blood run cold. It was the same look Catherine gave to business rivals right before she destroyed them. "I need some air," Avery said abruptly. "Darling, you can't go out there." Richard reached for her. "There are reporters everywhere. The video is already viral. We need to strategize, make a statement. I need air, Richard. Avery pulled away from him, from all of them. I need to think. She couldn't finish the sentence. Her mother stepped forward. I'll go with her. No. Avery was already backing toward the door. I need to be alone. Please. Just give me an hour. She didn't wait for permission. She hiked up her dress and ran, ignoring Richard calling after her, ignoring the hotel staff's startled looks as she raced past. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, her heels echoing in the concrete stairwell, and burst out into the parking garage. Her car. She needed her car. Except she couldn't drive in this dress, and her keys were in her clutch, which was... where? Still at the church, probably. Avery. He spun around. Jax stood behind a concrete pillar, his bike parked in the shadows. He'd been waiting. You know where, he'd said. This was their spot. 10 years ago they used to meet in parking garages and back alleys, anywhere they could steal a few minutes alone. Her parents hadn't approved of him, the biker with rough hands and a police record for street racing. So they'd hidden their relationship, made a game of secret rendezvous. Looking at him now, Avery felt something crack open inside her chest. Tell me the truth, she said. All of it. No more cryptic warnings. I need to know what happened to you. I need to know why you left. And I need to know what the Blackwoods have to do with any of this. Jax stepped forward into the fluorescent light. Up close she could see the weight of the years on him. The new scars, the shadows under his eyes, the way he held himself like a man expecting a fight. The truth is going to destroy everything you think you know, he said quietly. Your perfect fiancé, his perfect family, your perfect life. Once I tell you, there's no going back. Avery thought about Richard, about the wedding they'd planned, about the future she'd been so sure of just hours ago. Then she thought about the way Jax used to make her laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she was something rare and precious, the way her heart had stopped the moment he'd removed his helmet in that church. I don't want to go back, she whispered. Jax let out a breath like he'd been holding it for 10 years. But not here. It's not safe. They'll be looking for you and they'll be looking for me. He held out his hand. Come with me. I have a place where we can talk. Where I can show you everything. Avery stared at his hand, rough, scarred, honest. The hand of the man who'd broken her heart. The hand of the man who might have saved her from the biggest mistake of her life. She thought about Richard's smooth politician's hands, about the life she'd almost committed to. Then she took Jax's hand. 10 years earlier. Avery Mitchell had her entire future mapped out the summer she turned 22. Law school in the fall. A partnership track at her father's firm by 30. Maybe a sensible marriage to someone from the right family, someone her mother would approve of. She had 3 months of freedom before her real life began, and she was determined not to waste them. That's how she found herself at Cordero's Custom Bikes on a sweltering July afternoon, her BMW making embarrassing sounds that no luxury vehicle should make. Transmissions shot, the mechanic said, wiping his hands on a rag. He was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and oil under his fingernails. Gonna take at least a week to get the parts. A week. Avery's stomach dropped. I can't be without my car for a week. Sorry, miss. That's the best I can do. He gestured to the garage behind him. Unless you want to take the loaner. She's not pretty, but she runs. The loaner turned out to be a 1970s pickup truck with more rust than paint. Avery was about to decline when someone laughed. She turned. A man. No, he was definitely a man, probably close to her age but carrying himself like he'd lived twice as long, leaned against a motorcycle watching her with obvious amusement. City girls scared of a little truck, he said. Avery bristled. I'm not scared. I'm just discerning. Discerning. He grinned and something in Avery's chest fluttered. That's a fancy word for picky. And you're a mechanic? She looked him over. Torn jeans, black t-shirt, tattoos winding down both arms, that infuriating smile. That's a nice way of saying you couldn't get a real job. His uncle barked a laugh. She got you there, Jax. Jax pushed off the motorcycle and walked toward her. Up close he was unfairly attractive. Strong jaw, gray eyes that seemed to see everything, that scar above his eyebrow that made him look dangerous. Which he probably was. A real job, he repeated. You mean sitting in an office wearing a suit, slowly dying inside while I make money for someone else? I mean contributing to society in a meaningful way. Lady, I keep people's vehicles running. That's pretty meaningful when your transmission's shot and you're stranded on the highway. He crossed his arms. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? Never been stranded. Never had to fix anything yourself. Never had to. You don't know anything about me. I know your type. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. Rich girl, slumming it for the summer before real life starts. You'll take the BMW, go back to your perfect life, marry some guy with a trust fund. You'll forget all about the mechanics who kept your world running. Avery should have been offended. She should have demanded her keys back and called for a ride. Instead, she met his eyes and said, "You're right about everything except one thing." Yeah. What's that? I won't forget. Something shifted in his expression. The amusement faded, replaced by curiosity. No. No. Avery held out her hand. I'll take the loaner. And when I come back to pick up my car, you can tell me why you really work here. Because I don't think it's because you couldn't get a real job. Jax stared at her hand for a long moment before shaking it. His grip was firm, calloused, warm. It's a deal. She came back 3 days later with homemade lemonade and an excuse about checking on the repair progress. He took her for a ride on his motorcycle. She came back the next day with sandwiches. He taught her how to change a tire. Within a week, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Avery would show up at the garage in the evenings after Jax's shift ended and they'd talk. About everything and nothing. He told her about growing up with his uncle after his parents died, about the freedom he found on the open road, about his dreams of opening his own shop someday. She told him about the pressure of being a Mitchell, about how her whole life had been planned before she was born, about how sometimes she felt like she was watching her future happen to someone else. So don't let it, Jax said one night. They were sitting on the roof of the garage watching the sunset paint the sky. Make a different choice. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You just have to want it bad enough. Avery looked at him, at this man who lived so freely, who answered to no one, who'd never let anyone tell him who to be. Is that what you do? Just want things and make them happen? Sometimes. He turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Right now there's something I want pretty bad. What? Instead of answering, he leaned in and kissed her. Avery had been kissed before. Proper kisses from proper boys at proper times. Nothing had prepared her for this. For the way Jax's hand cupped her face like she was something precious, for the way his lips moved against hers like he was memorizing the moment, for the way everything else in the world just disappeared. When they broke apart, she was shaking. Was that okay? He asked, his voice rough. I think, Avery whispered, that was the most honest thing anyone's ever done to me. His smile was like sunrise. Good. Because I'm going to do it again. And he did. On the roof of his garage, under a bleeding sky, with the smell of motor oil and possibility in the air, Avery kissed a boy her parents would never approve of and felt more like herself than she ever had before. They spent the rest of that summer in secret, stolen moments between her obligations and his work. Midnight rides along the coast. Mornings tangled in his bed in the apartment above the garage. Afternoons where she'd watch him work on bikes and he'd catch her staring and that smile would spread across his face. What are we doing? She asked one night in late August. Fall was coming. Law school was coming. Real life was coming. Jax pulled her closer, his arms wrapped around her from behind as they sat on his motorcycle, parked at their favorite overlook. We're living. But when summer ends, then we'll figure it out. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm not letting you go, Avery. I don't care about your parents or your plans or any of it. We'll make it work. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. Promise me, she whispered. I promise. No matter what happens, I'm not walking away from this. From you. 2 weeks later, she showed up at the garage and he was gone. His uncle wouldn't look her in the eye. He had to leave. I'm sorry, miss. I can't tell you anything more than that. She'd waited, told, searched. But Jax Cordero had vanished like smoke, taking her heart and that perfect summer with him. Now, sitting on the back of his bike again after 10 years, her wedding dress hiked up around her thighs, her arms wrapped around his waist, Avery felt that same rush of freedom, of possibility, of danger. Where are we going? She shouted over the wind. Jax's answer was carried back to her. Somewhere they can't find us. Somewhere I can finally tell you why I broke my promise. The safe house was a cabin 40 miles outside the city, hidden at the end of a dirt road that wound through dense forest. Avery's wedding dress was dirty and torn by the time they arrived, her feet aching from the heels she'd finally kicked off somewhere around mile 20. Jax killed the engine and helped her off the bike. His hands lingered on her waist for just a moment too long before he pulled away, jaw tight. "It's not much," he said, nodding toward the cabin. "But it's off the grid. No cameras, no paper trail. I've been using it since I came out of protection." "You came out." Avery hugged herself against the evening chill. "I thought witness protection was permanent." "It was supposed to be." Jax unlocked the door and gestured her inside. "Until I found out you were marrying into the Blackwood family." The cabin was sparse. A kitchenette, a worn couch, a bed in the corner. But what caught Avery's attention was the wall covered in photographs, documents, and strings connecting them like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. She moved closer, her heart pounding. Photos of Richard's father at construction sites. Harrison Blackwood shaking hands with men in expensive suits. Property deeds. Bank statements. And in the center of it all, a photo of a younger Jax, battered and bloody, being loaded into an ambulance. "What is all this?" she whispered. Jax came to stand beside her. 10 years of my life. And the reason I left you." He pointed to a photo of a warehouse. "August 2015. I was making a delivery to this place. Just a routine parts drop for my uncle's shop. I walked in on a meeting I wasn't supposed to see." His finger moved to a photo of Harrison Blackwood. "Your future father-in-law was there along with 3 members of the Moretti crime family. They were discussing a real estate deal, but it wasn't about property. They were planning to use Blackwood development to launder money from illegal gambling operations, drug trafficking, extortion." Avery's knees went weak. He sank onto the couch. That's impossible. Harrison Blackwood is on the board of half a dozen charities. He's been featured in Forbes. The best criminals always are." Jax's voice was bitter. He grabbed a file folder and handed it to her. "They saw me. Knew I'd heard everything. They chased me, beat me half to death and left me in an alley. A cop found me 3 hours later, barely alive." Avery opened the folder with shaking hands. Medical reports. Police statements. Photos of injuries that made her stomach turn. "The FBI wanted me to testify," Jax continued. "The Morettis were their white whale, but they'd never been able to prove the Blackwoods' involvement. I was their key witness. But the Morettis have a long reach and the Blackwoods have money and power. The prosecutor said my life was in danger, that anyone close to me was in danger. So they put you in witness protection." "Not immediately. First I had to disappear. Had to make it look like I'd run away, that I was unreliable, that my testimony wouldn't hold up. They couldn't know I was cooperating." Jax crouched in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "I couldn't tell you, Avery. I couldn't even say goodbye. They said if the Morettis or the Blackwoods knew about you, they'd use you to get to me. I had to cut all ties. Had to let you think I'd abandoned you." Tears blurred Avery's vision. "You let me think you didn't love me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." His voice cracked. "Every day for 10 years I thought about you. Wondered if you were okay. If you'd moved on. If you'd found someone who could give you the life you deserved. And then you found out about Richard." Jax nodded. 2 months ago. I'd completed my testimony, the Morettis were in prison and I thought it was over. I was trying to figure out how to find you, how to explain. Then I saw the engagement announcement in the paper." He pulled out a newspaper clipping. "Avery Mitchell to wed Richard Blackwood. I did some digging and realized the Blackwoods had walked away clean. The FBI couldn't prove their involvement without additional evidence. Harrison had covered his tracks too well." Avery stared at Richard's smiling face in the engagement photo. She thought he was safe. Stable. Everything Jax wasn't. "Richard doesn't know," she said, though it came out like a question. "Maybe not about the criminal enterprise. But he knows something's off with his family." Jax pulled out another document. 6 months ago, Richard requested a full audit of Blackwood development. According to my source at the FBI, he was concerned about irregularities in the books. His father shut him down, threatened to cut him off. Richard never mentioned that. Because Harrison scared him into silence. Jax's expression hardened. The Blackwoods are desperate to maintain their reputation. They've spent years building this empire, laundering blood money into legitimate businesses. They won't let anything or anyone threaten that. Avery stood on shaky legs and walked to the wall of evidence. She touched the photo of Harrison, the man who'd welcomed her into his family, who'd called her daughter, who'd promised to take care of her forever. "What were you planning to do?" she asked. "Crashing into my wedding like that?" "I was trying to stop you from walking into a trap." Jax moved behind her. "I was trying to save you." "By ruining my wedding? By making me look like a fool in front of everyone I know? By keeping you alive?" His voice rose and she turned to see the fear in his eyes. "Don't you get it? Once you married Richard, you became a Blackwood. You became a liability they could control. And the Blackwoods don't let liabilities walk away." A chill ran down Avery's spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Harrison Blackwood has made problems disappear before. Business partners who asked too many questions. An accountant who noticed the discrepancies. They're all gone, Avery. Accidents. Suicides. Unsolved murders." He gripped her shoulders. "I couldn't let you become another one." Avery's phone buzzed in the pocket of her dress. She'd forgotten she still had it. She pulled it out to see dozens of missed calls. Voicemails. Text messages. The most recent was from Richard. "We need to talk. Come home. Please. "They're looking for you," Jax said. "They know you're with me. And they're going to come for us both." "Then what do we do?" Jax met her eyes and she saw the determination there. The same look he'd had that summer when he'd promised to make their relationship work. When he'd sworn he'd never leave her. "We finish what I started 10 years ago," he said. "We take down the Blackwoods. All of them. But I can't do it without you. I need someone on the inside, someone they trust. Someone who can get me the evidence the FBI needs to put Harrison away for good." "You want me to go back?" Avery's voice was hollow. "To Richard. To that family. I know what I'm asking. I know it's dangerous and unfair and I'll do it." Jax blinked. "What?" "I'll do it," Avery repeated, stronger this time. "For 10 years I thought you'd abandoned me. For 10 years I tried to build a life that made sense, that was safe, that my parents would approve of. But it was all a lie." She stepped closer to him. "You want the truth? The only time I've ever felt truly alive was with you. So if you're asking me to risk everything to bring down the people who stole our future, I'm in." Something fierce and proud flashed across Jax's face. Then he cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "This is going to be dangerous," he warned. "I know. They might hurt you. I know. And even if we succeed, there's no guarantee we can fix what's broken between us." Avery covered his hand with hers. "I know that too. But I'd rather die trying to take them down than spend the rest of my life wondering what if." Jax kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of 10 years of longing. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. He said. "Then here's what we're going to do." Avery stood in front of the Blackwood mansion at midnight, still wearing her ruined wedding dress, and tried to remember the plan. Go back. Act confused and traumatized. Let them think Jax fed you lies. Get access to Harrison's office. Find the real financial records. Simple. Except nothing about this was simple. She pressed the doorbell and within seconds Richard flung the door open. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. "Avery." He pulled her into his arms so quickly she almost stumbled. "Thank God. We've been looking everywhere. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" Over his shoulder, Avery could see Catherine and Harrison in the foyer, watching. Catherine's face was unreadable. Harrison wore an expression of paternal concern, but his eyes were calculating. "I'm fine," Avery said, pulling back from Richard. I needed to think." Richard's relief morphed into anger. "You disappeared for 6 hours with a criminal who crashed our wedding. Your parents have been calling every hospital, Richard." Harrison's voice was gentle but firm. "Let her breathe, son. She's been through quite an ordeal." He moved forward, placing a hand on Avery's shoulder. "Come inside, dear. You must be exhausted." Avery let them lead her to the sitting room, where a fire crackled in the hearth despite the summer heat. Someone draped a blanket around her shoulders. Catherine pressed a glass of brandy into her hands. "Now," Harrison said, settling into his leather chair like a king on his throne. Tell us everything. What did that man say to you? Avery took a sip of brandy, buying time. She'd rehearsed this with Jax, but sitting here under Harrison's penetrating gaze, the lies felt transparent. He said. She let her voice shake. He said terrible things about your family. About criminal connections, money laundering. He showed me photographs and documents. He claimed you were involved with organized crime. Catherine's laugh was sharp. How absurd. I know, Avery said quickly. I told him he was insane. But he was so convincing and I was so confused. After he left 10 years ago with no explanation, and then suddenly he's back saying all these things. She let tears fill her eyes, not hard given everything. I didn't know what to believe. Richard knelt beside her chair, taking her hand. Of course you were confused. This man, this Jax, he clearly has some kind of fixation on you. Or he's being paid to disrupt our wedding, to damage our family's reputation. Paid. Avery blinked. By whom? We have competitors, Harrison said smoothly. People who would love to see Blackwood development fail. This is clearly a coordinated attack. The timing, the accusations, it's all too convenient. What did he show you exactly? Catherine leaned forward. These supposed documents? This was the dangerous part. Avery needed to give them enough to seem credible, but not enough to expose Jax's real evidence. Bank statements. Photos of you at construction sites. She looked at Harrison. Meeting with men he claimed were criminals. But they were old photos, grainy. They could have been anyone. Harrison nodded slowly. And where is he now? This Jax. I don't know. He brought me to some cabin, showed me everything, and then... Avery swallowed. Then I told him I didn't believe him. That I was going to marry Richard no matter what he said. He got angry and left. I found my way to a gas station and called a cab. She could feel them evaluating her story, looking for holes. Richard squeezed her hand, believing every word. But Harrison and Catherine, they were harder to read. "My poor dear," Harrison said finally. "What a terrible experience. And on what should have been the happiest day of your life." He stood, moving to a cabinet and pulling out his phone. "I'll call my security team. Give them a description of this man, the location of the cabin. The police will want to question him." "No." The word came out too sharp. Avery softened her tone. I just want to forget about it. Can't we just move on? Reschedule the wedding." Richard's face lit up. "Really? After everything, you still want to marry me?" Avery touched his cheek, and it wasn't entirely an act when she felt guilty. Richard wasn't a bad man. He was just blind to his family's sins. "I love you," she said, and part of her wished it were true. It would make everything so much simpler. "That's my girl," Harrison said, but something in his voice made her skin crawl. "Richard, why don't you take Avery upstairs? Help her get cleaned up. Catherine and I will handle the rescheduling." As Richard led her toward the stairs, Avery heard Catherine's whisper, "She's lying." "We'll deal with it," Harrison replied. "First we find the biker. Then we handle the girl." At 3 a.m, after Richard had finally fallen asleep beside her in the guest room, Avery crept out of bed. She'd been in this house dozens of times, knew its layout, knew which floorboards creaked. Harrison's office was on the first floor at the end of the east wing. She moved through the dark house like a ghost, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would wake everyone. The office door was locked, but Jax had taught her how to pick simple locks that summer. One of many skills she'd learned from him. The lock clicked open and she slipped inside. The office was exactly what she expected. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with law books and awards. But she wasn't looking for the obvious. Jax had told her what to look for. A safe, probably behind a painting or bookshelf. Financial records that Harrison kept separate from the legitimate business files. He started with the paintings. Nothing. The bookshelf. Also nothing. He was running out of time. Richard would wake up or Harrison would. Then she saw it. A small button hidden under the desk. She pressed it and a section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing a wall safe. "You won't be able to crack it," Jax had said. Asterisk, "but you can get me into the house. Hide a key, a window unlocked, anything." Asterisk. Avery pulled out her phone and texted the number Jax had given her. Asterisk, "found the safe. East Wing office. Behind bookshelf." Asterisk. The response came immediately. Asterisk, "good. Now get out." Asterisk. But Avery couldn't resist. She tried the safe handle just in case, and to her shock it opened. Harrison hadn't locked it. Inside were ledgers, files, USB drives. And something else. Photos. Recent ones. Of her and Jax at the cabin. Somehow they'd known. They'd followed her or tracked her phone or... I'm disappointed, Avery. He spun around. Harrison stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall light, a gun in his hand. I really wanted to believe you, he continued, stepping into the room. Richard loves you, you know. He's blind to everything else, but he genuinely loves you. I was prepared to welcome you into this family, to protect you as one of our own. He closed the door behind him. But you just couldn't let it go, could you? Avery's mind raced. The window was too far. The door was blocked. She was trapped. You killed people, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. You laundered money for murderers and drug dealers. You destroyed lives. I built an empire, Harrison corrected. Do you think empires are built cleanly? Do you think any great family achieved their position without getting their hands dirty? He moved closer, the gun steady in his hand. The world is divided into two types of people, Avery. Those who take what they want and those who let things happen to them. I'm a taker. And you? He smiled. You're just collateral damage. The window behind Harrison exploded. Jax came through in a shower of glass, tackling Harrison to the ground. The gun went off, the bullet embedding in the ceiling. They fought, a tangle of fists and fury, and Avery scrambled for the gun that had skittered across the floor. She grabbed it just as Richard burst through the door. What the hell? He froze, taking in the scene. His father on the ground, Jax on top of him. Avery holding the gun. Richard, Harrison gasped. Help me. They're trying to kill me. Don't listen to him, Jax said, breathing hard. Your father's a criminal. He's been laundering money for the mob for over a decade. That's insane. The evidence is right there. Avery pointed to the open safe. Look for yourself. Richard hesitated, torn between his father and the truth. Then slowly he moved to the safe. Pulled out a ledger. Started reading. The blood drained from his face. Dad. His voice was small, broken. Dad, what is this? Harrison's expression shifted from rage to something almost like pity. You were never supposed to see that. You were supposed to stay innocent, stay clean. The business was supposed to be yours someday, legitimate and profitable. Built on blood money. Richard's hands shook. All of it. Everything we are, everything we have, it's built on murder and drugs and... He looked at Avery. He knew. That's why you came back. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. The FBI is 2 minutes out, Jax said, still pinning Harrison down. I called them before I came in. Richard looked at his father, at Avery, at the wreckage of his life. I didn't know, he said. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, Avery said, and she meant it. The sirens stopped outside. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. And as federal agents flooded the room, as Harrison was handcuffed and read his rights, as Richard sank into a chair with his head in his hands, Avery finally let herself breathe. It was over. 10 years of lies, 10 years of pain, 10 years of believing she'd lost the only man she'd ever truly loved. It was finally over. The FBI field office was sterile and cold, nothing like the warm chaos of the Blackwood mansion. Avery had been here for 6 hours, giving her statement, answering questions, watching through one-way glass as Harrison Blackwood sat stone-faced across from federal prosecutors. Catherine had been arrested at the house. Richard was in another room, cooperating fully, his entire world shattered in a single night. And Jax was somewhere in this building giving his own testimony. She hadn't seen him since the agents had separated them at the mansion. Ms. Mitchell. Agent Sarachan entered the room with a coffee and a tired smile. We're almost done. Just a few more questions about the offshore accounts. Avery rubbed her eyes. I already told you I don't know anything about offshore accounts. I was only engaged to Richard for 6 months. I didn't have access to their financial records. But you broke into Harrison's safe. Because Jax asked me to. I was trying to help. Agent Chin sat down across from her, her expression sympathetic. I know this has been difficult. But you should know, what you did tonight. It's going to put away one of the most dangerous criminal networks on the East Coast. The evidence in that safe connects the Blackwoods to not just the Morettas, but 3 other crime families. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder. Harrison's looking at life in prison. The weight of it settled over Avery. She'd helped destroy Richard's family. Yes, they were criminals. Yes, they deserved it. But Richard didn't. He was just a man who'd loved her, who'd never known the truth about his own father. "What about Richard?" she asked quietly. "He's clean. We've been investigating him separately, had to make sure he wasn't complicit. Every indication is that Harrison kept him in the dark." Agent Chen paused. "He's asked about you. Wants to know if you're okay." Guilt twisted in Avery's stomach. "Can I see him?" "Not yet. But soon." Agent Chen stood. "You're free to go, by the way. We have everything we need for now. We'll be in touch about the trial." "Wait." Avery caught her arm. "Where's Jax?" "Jax Cordero." Something flickered across the agent's face. "He left about an hour ago." "Left?" Avery's heart stuttered. "What do you mean left?" "He completed his testimony and departed. I assumed he'd told you." But Avery was already running. She burst out of the federal building into the gray dawn light, scanning the parking lot frantically. No motorcycle. No leather jacket. No Jax. He'd left. No. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed the number he'd given her. It rang once, then went to a generic voicemail. No, no, no. Avery. She whirled around. Richard stood behind her, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His suit was rumpled, his eyes red-rimmed. "I didn't know," he said hoarsely. "I swear to God I didn't know what my father was. What my family did." "I know." Avery's voice broke. "I know you didn't, Richard. I'm so sorry." "Don't." He held up a hand. "Don't apologize. You did the right thing. You stopped me from turning into my father." He laughed bitterly. "All my life I wanted to make him proud. And he was a monster." They stood there in the pale morning light, 2 people whose lives had been detonated by the truth. "I need to ask you something," Richard said finally. "And I need you to be honest. Did you ever love me? Or was it always him?" Avery wanted to lie, wanted to be kind. But she owed him the truth. "I cared about you," she said carefully. "I wanted to love you. I tried so hard to love you. But yes, it was always him." Richard nodded slowly, like he'd expected this. "You should find him then. Before he disappears again." "He already did." "Did he?" Richard pulled something from his pocket, a piece of paper with an address. "I overheard Agent Chen talking. He's not gone. He's just waiting." Avery took the paper with trembling hands. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you saved me. Because despite everything I want you to be happy." He kissed her forehead, gentle and final. "Goodbye, Avery." He walked away, back toward the federal building where his mother and father would spend the rest of their lives, where his family name would become synonymous with corruption and crime. And Avery knew she'd never see him again. The address led to the coastal overlook where she and Jax used to sit 10 years ago, watching the sun set over the ocean. His motorcycle was parked at the edge and he stood at the railing, his back to her. Avery approached slowly, her heart in her throat. "You left," she said. "Jax didn't turn around. I completed my testimony. My part was done." "Your part?" Anger flared hot in her chest. "Is that what I was to you? Just part of your investigation? Part of your revenge plan?" "No." His voice was rough. "You were never part of anything. You were everything. Then why did you leave? Why didn't you wait for me?" He finally turned and the pain in his eyes stole her breath. "Because I didn't know if you'd want me to wait. I destroyed your wedding. I ruined your engagement. I used you to take down the family you were about to marry into. You saved my life." "Did I?" Jax moved toward her. "Or did I just ruin it differently? 10 years ago I left to protect you. Now I've dragged you into danger, turned you into an accessory, made you choose between me and the future you planned. The future I planned was a lie." Avery closed the distance between them. "It was safe and acceptable and everything my parents wanted. But it wasn't what I wanted. It was never what I wanted." "What do you want, Avery?" His voice was barely a whisper. Tell me what you want because I can't make this choice for you. I can't be another thing that happens to you without your consent. Avery looked at this man. This infuriating, noble, damaged man who'd loved her enough to let her go and brave enough to come back. The man who'd kept every promise except the one he'd had no control over. I want you, she said simply. I want the life we were supposed to have. I want midnight rides and stolen moments and arguments about nothing. I want messy and complicated and real. I want you, Jax. I've always wanted you. Something cracked in his expression. I don't have anything to offer you. No fancy house, no trust fund, no. I don't care. She grabbed his jacket, pulled him close. I have enough money for both of us. You have enough love for both of us. That's all we need. It won't be easy, he warned, but his arms were already coming around her. My uncle's shop is gone. I have to start over. Build something new. Then we'll build it together. Your parents will hate me. They'll get over it. People will talk. The scandal. Let them talk. Avery rose on her toes, her lips inches from his. I've spent 10 years being careful. Being appropriate. Being everything I thought I should be. I'm done with that. I choose you, Jax Cordero. I choose us. I choose the messy, complicated, imperfect life we're going to have together. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of 10 years of longing. She kissed him back with everything she had, pouring a decade of heartbreak and hope into the embrace. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jax rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. I never stopped loving you. I know. Avery smiled. I never stopped either. So what now? She looked at his motorcycle, at the open road stretching before them, at the sunrise painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Now. He grinned. How we ride. 3 days after Harrison Blackwood's arrest, Avery woke up in Jax's apartment above what used to be his uncle's garage. The space was small and sparse, but with morning light streaming through the windows and Jax's arm draped across her waist, it felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Agent Chin. Hello. Avery answered, careful not to wake Jax. Miss Mitchell, we have a situation. The agent's voice was tense. How soon can you and Mr. Cordero get to a secure location? Avery sat up, her heart racing. What's wrong? Vincent Moretti posted bail this morning. The name sent ice through her veins. Vincent Moretti, the youngest son of the crime family Jax had testified against, the one person who'd vowed revenge on everyone involved. He posted bail. How is that possible? His lawyers found a technicality. He's out pending trial, and Ms. Mitchell, he knows about you. He knows you helped bring down the Blackwoods, which means he knows you helped build the case against his family. Agent Chin paused. There's been chatter. Threats. We're arranging protective custody for both of you. Jax stirred beside her, his eyes snapping open at the word threats. What's going on? He asked. Avery covered the phone. Vincent Moretti is out. His face went pale. He took the phone from her hand. Agent Chin, this is Cordero. How much time do we have? Avery couldn't hear the response, but she saw Jax's jaw tighten. Understood. We'll meet you at the rendezvous point in 30 minutes. He hung up and was already moving, pulling on clothes. We need to go. Now. Jax. Vincent Moretti is psychotic, Avery. His father and brothers are locked up because of my testimony. He's lost everything and he blames me. He grabbed a duffel bag and started shoving things inside. When I was in protection, the marshals showed me photos of what Vincent does to people who cross him. I won't let him get to you. 20 minutes later, they were on Jax's motorcycle, weaving through traffic toward the FBI's safe house. Avery's arms were wrapped tight around his waist, her heart pounding with every turn. They were 2 blocks away when she saw the black SUV. Jax, she screamed, but it was too late. The SUV swerved in front of them. Jax braked hard, the bike skidding sideways. They went down, sliding across the pavement. Avery's helmet cracked against the road, stars exploding behind her eyes. Men poured out of the SUV, 3 of them all wearing suits, all pointing guns. Well. A man in an expensive Italian suit stepped forward. Vincent Moretti was younger than Avery expected, maybe 30, with slicked back hair and dead eyes. The mechanic and his little lawyer. How romantic. Jax pushed himself up, positioning himself between Avery and the guns. Let her go, Vincent. She's not part of this. Not part of this? Vincent laughed. She destroyed the Blackwoods. The Blackwoods were our business partners. She cost my family millions. He tilted his head. No, I think she's very much part of this. One of his men grabbed Avery, hauling her to her feet. Pain shot through her shoulder where she'd hit the pavement. Don't touch her. Jax lunged forward, but two guns immediately trained on his chest. Easy, mechanic. Vincent pulled out his own weapon. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to get in the car. We're going to go somewhere quiet. And then we're going to have a long conversation about consequences. The FBI knows we're here, Avery said, trying to keep her voice steady. They're expecting us. When we don't show up. When you don't show up, they'll assume you ran. Two lovers fleeing the aftermath of a scandal. Vincent smiled. I've planned this very carefully. By the time they realize you're missing, you'll both be at the bottom of the harbor. Sirens wailed in the distance. Vincent's expression flickered, just for a second, just enough. Jax took his chance. He drove his elbow back into the gut of one gunman, grabbed the weapon and fired. The shot went wild, but it was enough chaos. Avery stomped on her captor's instep, twisted free and ran. Get them! Vincent screamed. Gunfire erupted. Avery felt a bullet whip past her head as Jax grabbed her hand and pulled her into an alley. They ran, jumping over trash cans and debris, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Here! Jax yanked open a fire escape ladder and they climbed, hands slipping on the rusty metal. Up, onto the roof with Vincent's men right behind them. They ran across rooftops, jumping gaps between buildings that were too wide, too dangerous. Avery's lungs burned. Her injured shoulder screamed. But Jax's hand was in hers and she knew he wouldn't let her fall. There. He pointed to a building with scaffolding. They could climb down, get back to street level, lose themselves in the crowd. The bullet hit Jax in the leg. He went down hard, crying out, blood blooming across his jeans. Avery screamed, dropping beside him. Vincent and his men emerged onto the roof, guns drawn. Should have just gotten in the car, Vincent said, advancing. Now I'm going to make this hurt. He raised his gun, aiming at Jax's head. Freeze. FBI. Agents poured onto the roof from both sides, Agent Chin in the lead, a dozen armed agents behind her. Vincent's men didn't even try to run. They dropped their weapons, hands up. But Vincent kept his gun pointed at Jax. You ruined my family, he said softly. You destroyed everything my father built. I don't care if they kill me. I don't care about anything except making you pay. Vincent, don't. Agent Chin shouted. Put the weapon down. He took everything from me. Everything. Jax looked up at him, breathing hard, his leg bleeding but his eyes clear. Your father took everything from himself. He made his choices. He built an empire on murder and suffering. I just made sure he faced consequences. Consequences. Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger. Here are yours. Avery didn't think. She threw herself in front of Jax just as Vincent fired. The bullet hit her in the chest just below her shoulder. The impact spun her around and she fell into Jax's arms. Around them, agents fired and Vincent went down, his body hitting the roof with a sickening thud. Avery. Jax's voice sounded far away. Avery, stay with me. Stay with me. She tried to speak but blood filled her mouth. The sky above was so blue, and Jax's face was the last thing she saw before the darkness took her. She woke up in a hospital room, sunlight streaming through the windows. Jax sat beside her bed, his leg bandaged, his hand holding hers. When he saw her eyes open, he made a sound between a laugh and a sob. You're awake. Oh God, you're awake. Did I? Her voice was raspy. Did I die? Almost. He pressed her hand to his lips. The bullet missed your heart by an inch. You've been unconscious for 2 days. His eyes were red like he'd been crying. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever take a bullet for me. Then don't get shot at, she whispered, managing a weak smile. He laughed, the sound broken. Deal. Vincent. Dead. His men are in custody. The Moretti organization is finished. Jax leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. It's over, Avery. All of it. We're safe. Safe. The word felt foreign and wonderful. What now? She asked. Jax pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes shining with tears and hope and love. Now we live. We build that life we talked about. We get a second chance at the future we were supposed to have. Promise me, Avery said, squeezing his hand. Promise me you won't disappear again. I promise. He kissed her gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. I'm never leaving you again. Not for anything. Not for anyone. You're stuck with me, Avery Mitchell. She smiled, feeling the pull of the stitches, the ache of healing. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. Outside the hospital room, life went on. The Blackwoods would stand trial. The Morettas were destroyed. The truth had come to light as it always does. But in this moment, in this room, there was only Avery and Jax. Two people who'd lost each other and found their way back against impossible odds. It was enough. It was everything. 1 year later. The grand opening of Cordero and Mitchell Custom Bikes was everything Avery had dreamed of and nothing like what she'd planned for her life. The shop sat on the edge of town in a renovated warehouse with exposed brick and industrial lighting. The sign outside was hand-painted, Jax's uncle's old logo, updated with both their names. Inside, custom motorcycles gleamed under the lights, each one a work of art. Avery stood at the front door watching people stream in. Bikers in leather. Families with curious kids. Even a few lawyers from her old firm, looking uncomfortable but supportive. Nervous. Jax appeared beside her, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a button-down shirt. His version of dressing up. Terrified, she admitted. What if no one wants to buy bikes from a former lawyer and a guy who testified against the mob? He laughed and pulled her close. Then we'll figure something else out. We always do. The shop had been his idea, but she'd helped make it happen. After recovering from her injury, after the trials and testimonies and endless news coverage, they'd both needed something new. Something that was just theirs. Avery had liquidated her trust fund over her parents' protests and invested everything in the business. Jax had poured his expertise and passion into every detail. Together they'd built something real. Avery. Jax. Agent Chin waved from across the room. She'd become something of a friend over the past year, checking in on them, making sure they were adjusting to life after everything. This place is incredible. Thanks for coming, Avery said, hugging her. Wouldn't miss it. Though I have to say, I never pictured you as a businesswoman in the motorcycle industry. Neither did I. Avery looked around at the shop, their shop, and felt something settle in her chest. But it turns out I'm good at it. The business side, the client relations. Jax builds the bikes, I handle everything else. It works. It works because we're partners, Jax corrected, his arm around her waist. In every way. Agent Chin smiled knowingly. Speaking of partners, I heard Harrison Blackwood's appeal was denied. He's looking at 30 years minimum. Good. Avery felt no guilt about it anymore. Harrison had made his choices. He'd hurt people, destroyed lives. He deserved every year of his sentence. And Richard? Agent Chin asked gently. Last I heard he moved to Portland. Started working for a nonprofit helping at-risk youth. Avery had gotten one letter from him 6 months ago. An apology for his family, a thank you for the truth, and a wish for her happiness. She'd written back once, telling him she forgave him, that he deserved peace. They'd never be friends, but the anger was gone. I hope he finds what he's looking for. And your parents? Agent Chin raised an eyebrow. Last time we talked, they were still not speaking to you. Avery glanced toward the door where her mother and father had just walked in, looking stiff and uncomfortable. They're working on it. It's not easy for them, accepting that their daughter chose a different path. But they're here. That's something. That's everything, Jax murmured. Agent Chin excused herself and Avery steeled herself to face her parents. But before she could move, her mother approached first. Avery. Margaret Mitchell looked older, more worn, but her eyes were softer than Avery remembered. The shop is lovely. Mom. Avery's throat tightened. You came. Of course we came. You're our daughter. Her father stepped forward, and to Avery's shock he extended his hand to Jax. Mr. Cordero. Sir. Jax shook his hand and Avery could feel the tension in his body. Her father had called him a criminal, a bad influence, a mistake. But he was trying now. I owe you an apology, her father said. Several, actually. You saved my daughter's life. Multiple times. and I refused to see it. You were protecting her, Jax said quietly. I understand that. I'd do the same. Her mother took Avery's hand. We may not understand your choices. We may not have wanted this life for you. But we can see that you're happy. Truly happy. And that's what matters. Avery's eyes filled with tears. I am happy. Happier than I've ever been. Then that's enough. Her mother squeezed her hand. It has to be enough. They didn't stay long. It would take time to truly heal that relationship. But they'd come. They tried. It was a start. As the sun set and the crowd began to thin, Avery found herself out back, sitting on Jax's motorcycle, the same one that had crashed through her wedding. He'd rebuilt it, made it better, stronger. Kind of like them. Jax came out and leaned against the bike beside her. Successful grand opening? Very. She smiled. We already have 3 custom orders. Not bad for a couple of criminals. Former criminals, she corrected. You were a witness. I was barely even an accessory. Tell that to the tabloids. He grinned. The story had been everywhere for months. The runaway bride, the biker who crashed her wedding, the criminal empire that fell. They'd become a cautionary tale, a romance novel, a scandal. But slowly the attention had faded. Life had gone on. Do you ever regret it? Avery asked. Walking away from witness protection? Crashing my wedding? All of it. Jax turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. Not for a second. You. She thought about her old life. The partnership at her father's firm she'd given up. The society wedding that never happened. The safe, predictable future she'd planned. Not for a second, she echoed. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Avery's heart stopped. I know we said we'd take things slow, Jax said. I know we've already been through enough drama for a lifetime. But there's something I need to ask you. He opened the box to reveal a simple silver band with a small diamond. Nothing like the enormous ring Richard had given her. This was understated, honest, real. Avery Mitchell, will you marry me? For real this time. No family drama, no criminal conspiracies. Just you and me and whatever life throws at us. Avery felt tears spill down her cheeks. Yes. God, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and she kissed him, tasting salt and joy and the promise of forever. So, he said when they broke apart, both grinning like fools. What do you want? Big wedding or small? Church or beach? How about the courthouse on a Tuesday? Avery laughed. Just us, an officiant, and no one crashing through any doors. Sounds perfect. And it was. 3 weeks later, they stood in front of a judge with Agent Chin and Jax's uncle as witnesses and said their vows. No designer dress, no 5-tier cake, no guest list of hundreds. Just 2 people who'd loved each other, lost each other, and fought their way back. That night they rode Jax's bike along the coast, the same route they'd taken 10 years ago. Avery's arms were wrapped around his waist, the wind whipping through her hair, the ring on her finger catching the moonlight. Where are we going? She shouted over the wind. Anywhere, he shouted back. Everywhere. Does it matter? And Avery realized it didn't. As long as they were together, as long as they had this, the freedom, the love, the life they'd chosen, nothing else mattered. They'd started as a summer romance, become a tragedy, and ended as an epic love story. They'd survived criminals and conspiracies, bullets and betrayals. They'd lost years and found each other. And now finally they had forever. Avery leaned her head against Jax's back, feeling the steady thrum of the engine, the solid warmth of the man she loved, and smiled into the night. This was it. This was everything. This was home. The